This is Moments of Truth, the webcast with and for customer success professionals. I'm your host, Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker. Today, I'm joined by Sam Loveland, VP of Customer Success at ServiceNow. Throughout her career, Sam has always been committed to post-sale customer success and laser focused on ensuring customers derive the greatest possible value from their investments in technology. She's worked for a number of SaaS companies, including Salesforce, Yammer, and Microsoft. Currently at ServiceNow, Sam is working with a global customer success team dedicated to providing their customers with expert guidance so they can achieve the most successful business outcomes possible as they deploy on their Now platform. Sam, welcome to the program, and thanks for making time for me today.
And thanks for having me here, Andrew.
Sam, you and I have both been doing this customer success thing for a long time. As a matter of fact, when I built out one of the early customer success teams out there in the market, I had the pleasure of getting some advice and mentoring from someone you know well, Dean Robeson, during his time helping build the Customers for Life program over at Salesforce. Given that we've both seen this role and strategy evolve pretty dramatically over the last couple of decades, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about that evolution of customer success.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and if I could go back, it's probably been, 15, 20 years since success first started. And if we all think about it, back in those days, it was, let's make customers happy. That was really the ultimate goal of the customer success organization. And even more specifically, it was a reactive, success organization. Do whatever it takes to make the customer happy. They're unhappy about something that's happening, and just all hands on deck. We'll do whatever it takes. And that really, that was great, to start out with. And then we pivoted, right? We learned from those engagements, we learned from those discussions and said, well, how can we be more proactive? How can we provide that prescriptive guidance to our customers? And we started to build, some structure around those conversations that we had with them. And, from prescriptive guidance, meaning what's the right business processes that you have to have in place? My favorite is what's the governance structure on how you're going to absorb the new technology within your ecosystem and your technology stack within your organization. And so, that really started to evolve customer success from not just making them happy, but how do we provide that prescriptive guidance to our customers? But, still that wasn't enough, right? Then you started to get into conversations around, well, what's the ROI, right? What is really the ROI of the customer success organization, and how do we drive value there? And, there's always, ways of measurement. We talk about CSAT, or some companies will look at NPS scores, but, part of the challenge with that, they're great, right? But they're also laggards, right? That you could be doing a lot of things potentially incorrectly, and you won't know for a year until those NPS survey scores come in. And so, really the focus that I see, that transition now that we're making as an industry in customer success, is how do we show that value by leveraging, data to drive that success and to drive those measurable business outcomes that customers are wanting in the industry.
Yeah, and those measurable business outcomes are a big part of what we teach, right? Trying to achieve the customer's desired outcome, because it gives us a North Star.
Yeah.
But I like that, it's interesting because back in the day, before there was customer success and on the on-prem days, I myself was very focused on process. Right. But it was the process of, okay, how do we go about rolling this out for our customer? And now it's, okay, well, how do we as a collective, the customer and customer success, go about deploying the solution so that you're achieving what that desired outcome is? Yeah. Right. That very prescriptive yet flexible approach to driving success. And so to your point, it went from this reactive thing to now we're talking about customer journeys and measuring CS and, the governance piece of, I've talked a lot about change management, how important it is that we move beyond this thought process that it's just, we're just going to teach them how to use the product.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we talked, we mentioned governance. That's so critical, right? You need to set up the right governance structure from the steering committee to the operating committee, your data intake process, right? How do you prioritize requests that are coming from across the business units so that you could schedule and prioritize the technology releases, regardless of what software as a service platform that you're on. But then just as importantly, right, is the organizational change management. I often hear companies say, I don't want to lift and shift, right? I don't want to move from, one technology platform to the next, but I want to digitally transform my organization and create these unique customer experiences and employee experiences. But a critical part of that is not just the technology, not the process, but it's the people part of it, right? And focusing on the human element. And so it's so critical to think about training and to think about adoption and what do you need to set both your people that are the team of individuals that are going to deploy the product, but also the change management that's necessary for the end users, right? How are they going to accept the product? And your end users, depending on what product you're talking about, could be your internal employees, but also more importantly, your customer base, right? And so how do we ensure that the customers are adopting the product that we're deploying out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean that's critically important, and you bring up a good point though, and you highlight the end users. I mean, it's gotten to the point where we need to be, especially these days, this kind of post-COVID world,
Yeah.
right? We need to be focused on the with them, the what's in it for them, the what's in it for me, but at the end user level. If
Yeah.
you want people to adopt what you're selling, right? We're
Yeah.
asking them to change a habit, likely,
Yeah.
and changing habits is really hard.
It's very hard, right? And we need to make it simple too. We have the consumerization, right, or the democratization of IT, and now technology is at everybody's fingertips, and they know in their personal world how easy it is to do things, right? You don't need a user manual. You don't need that. You can naturally, figure out how things work. And so how do we make it easy? But really where the OCM comes in is, why am I doing this? Why is this important for me to change how I do my business or change how I do my work? And, what does this mean? As you just said, what's in it for me, right? As an employee, as a customer, and, what value am I going to get by changing how I behave and how I work? And so that's so critical, right? Especially in this day, COVID, I think, has enhanced, our thinking and what we want to do there.
Yeah, and I think some companies, I've seen companies get the, they have approached that change management effort. They're aware of it, but they miss the mark in they fail to connect the dots with the end user,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not you've got the stakeholder overview,
Yeah.
right? This is why we're doing this, right? But they go straight to, this is why it's good for the company, as opposed to, this is why it's good for you.
Yeah. 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 And it's so spot on, right? I think, and that's where, I think I keep calling it the human element or the emotional element that you need to bring into the OCM process. And, something that I've seen a lot more of is, don't just, do OCM and training by death by PowerPoint, or even, mind tickle videos, or whatever your learning platform is, right? But it's really important to bring people along that journey, and and help them understand why, through that learning journey process, and bringing them along, because I think we're all tired of being talked to and told, you must do this, but we want to, you want the light bulb to click right within that employee or within that person, to say, oh, I get it, I get why we're doing this, I get the value of this.
Yeah, exactly. So I spent a good chunk of my career in data and analytics. And as we've gone through this maturation, I've started to see, and we're starting to experience, kind of more of this data-driven customer success. And I want to be clear that it doesn't mean that your customer success strategy and organization is purely driven by data, but you've got access to so much data. There's so much valuable information that you can learn that you don't even know that you have. So how can you do more with data?
Yeah. I mean, data-driven, information and, data-driven specifically for customer success, I think is so critically important to get customers to scale, right? Or to get companies to scale. Because, we can't just add human bodies or human resources of customer success managers, for companies, right? It's just
We
not
can't just throw bodies at this problem.
Well, it's not going to really hit the return on investment. And, at some point you hit, your limits. And so how do you use, data-driven information to help you scale? So we're always going to have a human element. You need that, right? You need that to learn. You need that to have those, conversations and those moments of truths and moments of, human elements. But, the data is going to help you ensure that you're having really the right conversation at the right time, right? And if you use the data correctly and leverage, AI and machine learning capabilities, you can really help push, information to customers in a real-time fashion that says, hey, this is the best next action for you to take based on, not only yourself, but, everybody that's using. And oh, by the way, here's how you compare to your peers in your industry, right? We like to challenge ourselves, right? We all want to see how we're doing against somebody, whether it's, our exercise fitness programs that we do, or, how we, stack rank in, even back in school with our grades, right? But, you want to see how you're comparing to your peers. And then not only that, but also learn from your peers, right? Like, hey, let me understand what my peer is doing. And, oh, maybe that's something that we should be taking on. And so, that's how I think we leverage data in the right way to drive the right discussions and, really help customers learn from one another to be able to, expand, their usage and their deployment of, whatever software as a service product it may be.
And to your point, the root of that is it's human nature, right? The
Yeah.
reason why my Peloton, and my Ergata rowing machine are so popular is because it pits me against other people. I've got something, it's a competition, right? So there's always, what can we do? Even if it's anonymized data, how do I compare to others? I always want to compare myself. We're always looking at those comparisons, whether it's in the stock market or it's every time Gartner comes out with a new Magic Quadrant ranking.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you said is really key, right? I know there's a lot of emphasis on data privacy and data security. And so, we're not talking about PII, personal information, we're talking about anonymized data, but data that can help individuals make the right decision, right? Whether that be a customer success manager that's working with a customer and having the right conversations, but also for the customer to make the right decisions on, hey, how do I move forward? What's the next step in my journey? I've just deployed the product. Now I need to get more adoption and usage out of the product. And then ultimately, right, the whole point of the data-driven aspect is helping customers to understand what's the value that they're getting from the product, right? And tying it back to, the business case, right? I still remember, like, we do such a great job, in the pre-sales process to talk about the business value or the business case with the customer and understanding, this is what you're going to get out of it, right? They needed to get it signed off by procurement and finance and everybody else for the investment they're making. Right. And then you do that. But so often that just goes nowhere, right? Whether it's a PowerPoint that no one ever looks at again, in the early days, it was a big, document that was shared, and it just kind of, went in your circular file, as we used to call it, and no one looked at it. But but times have changed, right? Companies are expecting that we show the value, right? We spent this much money. What's the value that we've gotten, right? How do we accelerate our time to value? Those are kind of the key words now, right, in the industry. And I hate saying buzzwords because it's so important, right? I don't see it as a buzzword, but it's an important aspect of their investment, is making sure they get the return on their investment. And so that's where the data driven and analytics and machine learning really helps, because it helps focus the attention to the, again, I'll go back to kind of the next best action that they need to take to get to that, value realization, to get to that value that they expected to achieve.
And I think it's important to point out that, the machine learning and the AI is an assistant. This is not meant to replace, once again, that human element. Right? But we have time is a finite resource.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so important that customer success managers are using the time that they have in the most efficient, most strategic activities as possible. And if we can get some help from something that's sitting there going, hey, by the way, you might want to have this conversation with this customer over here about this because of what I see in these patterns. Great. Right.
Yeah.
Help me focus my attention on this, on the conversations, on the things that I can do or that are going to have the biggest impact on value creation, value realization, return on the investment.
Yeah. And, you hit it on the head, right? Like AI and machine learning, like you said, doesn't replace the human component of it, right? And AI and machine learning only gets better from the feedback that, as customer success managers, as people have conversations with customers, as even customers say, yeah, that worked, that didn't work, right? And so it's really important to incorporate a feedback mechanism, right? Not only to, the success managers, so they know what's working and what's not working, but also to the AI and machine learning logic, because that's how it gets better, right? That's how it hones in and gets better in the recommendation that it's making. And so, I fundamentally believe, we will not get rid of the human component of customer success. It's critical, but data will help them be more effective, be more efficient, and it does allow us to scale, right? So you could touch more customers, right? Ultimately the goal is you touch every customer, and without some form of automation, without some form of data-driven capability, you just can't.
You can't do it. You can't do it. That stuff is fascinating to me. I mean, and we're really just at the beginning of it. But to your point, it requires kind of that closed loop. I mean, for those that aren't familiar enough with machine learning and AI, it's not like you flip a switch and it's brilliant and it has to learn. It is literally machine learning. It's learning over time, and it may make suggestions and give you thoughts based off of an initial set of data, a model that you've created, but it's constantly evolving, just like we do, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's able to just evolve a lot faster, right? It can take, we can absorb whatever number of data points it is. I know there's some statistics out there in the industry, but machine learning, computers can process thousands of data, right? In seconds. And that's the advantage that you have with incorporating or building this into, the data driven, and then, building workflow around that, right? And so, what's important is not only, do you make that recommendation, but, what's so key is the next best action, right? So not only do you make a recommendation and this is what you should be doing, but how do you go about executing that, right? And so workflow tied to that AI machine learning is so important, right? And if you have the ability to automate that workflow, right? And ServiceNow is a great workflow engine that allows us to do that. Yeah. But and what it does is twofold, right? It gives you that prescriptive guidance. So this is kind of tying back to that evolution. So it gives you that prescriptive guidance, that step-by-step instruction that we can give to our customers. Right. But think about that. If we have that all automated or, have that workflow that guides a person to it, think about from an enablement and onboarding perspective of a customer success person, right? It reduces that time to value for that individual, for that employee. And so, so that helps, right? Or anytime you make a change to a process, think about what we used to have to do. Okay, let's get a document together. We've got to train up the people. We got to explain why that's happening and make sure that everybody get access to it. Well, if you build it in the workflow engine, as long as people understand like how to invoke or how to utilize the workflow. If I have to change, a process or a step in there based on feedback or based on changes in, whatever regulation, whatever, I don't have to do a whole new enablement, right? I probably want to do a note that says, hey, we changed something in the process, make sure you read it thoroughly.
Right.
But it's documented. And so we know that they're, following that model. And again, that helps you scale, right? It gives you that repeatability. And, instead of, call it a time to ramp, I think historically we said, it might have been like 4 to 6 months with individuals, you could get it down to, cut it in half.
Right.
And, and that's a great news, right? And that also improves employee satisfaction.
Yep.
We talked a lot about customer satisfaction, but what about the actual employee, the customer success resources and driving up their own employee satisfaction?
And that's important. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sir Richard Branson, who, famously said, your customers are not number one, your employees are number one. And if you treat your employees well, that will feed back to your customers. They're going to treat your customers well.
Yeah. So true. So true. And I think, we focus on, employee voice surveys to leverage that. But again, I think surveys are great. I definitely don't want to take away from it, but getting that real-time feedback, right, which gives you that ability through workflow. And, it's outcome-driven workflow, right? You get feedback at the end. Did this work? Did this not work? So again, you could continually iterate and learn from that too.
Yeah, see, so that right there, that's the killer. I've always felt that is the absolute killer app for customer success. There's all these customer success vendors out there that a lot of their app is based on data. Well, as you know, data is if we're basing it on data, things have already happened.
Yeah.
Right. So the killer app, which I've not seen yet. I actually worked very briefly on one that I thought was going in that direction. And I'm talking for customer success, is the app that ensures that people are doing the right things in the right ways at the right times for your customers, right? Yeah. Really kind of managing that manufacturing line of customer success, right? Predictable, repeatable, consistent approach, with, of course, that flexibility, because every customer is special, right? Yeah. Every customer is special, even though they may not, they're all special. We've got to make them feel special. Right. But still, just ensuring that we're getting everything done. We're hitting the expectations that we've set, that we're achieving fast time to value. That's the killer customer success app.
Yeah, that is definitely the killer success app. And so, great news is, we're, launching it. And so you'll see more to come in FY22, what that looks like. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah. You gave me a little bit of preview when I spoke with your team a little while back. And actually, that was one other thing. It reminds me something that reminded me of what I talked about, something that you said a few minutes ago about connecting the dots between what we're doing and corporate objectives. Yeah. Right. So super important. And it's, I see it in more of in some of my more senior students, more advanced folks, that grok this notion that we need to, the best thing that we can do for our customers, especially those top tier big enterprise customers, is take this value that we've sold them, this idea of value that we sold them, and connect that directly to corporate objectives, and at a minimum, the very specific objectives for those key stakeholder executives that have brought us in, which likely feed into corporate objectives.
Yeah, I 100% agree, right? And having that always on, right? Always visual through some digital experience is so key, right? So not only that, kind of tying it back to the pre-sales when we talked about the BVA and how important it is, right? But how great is that we translate that to the post-sales world, to the customer success world. Yeah. And you immediately see that, right? So as customers, you're like, hey, wow, they listened to me during the sales process. Yeah. And really understand our challenge. And I'm not having to repeat myself over and over again to all the different handoffs that happen post-sales, right? But it's front and center. And as you undertake initiatives, whether that be implementing the product or setting up a governance or, setting up an OCM, tying that directly to those objectives, and then ultimately show the impact that it's having, the value that it's having, the value realization. How powerful is that, right? And, and we talk a lot about, there's always, kind of the desktop version or the internet version, but how powerful would that be if it was on your mobile device, right? And you can quickly take a look and see how you're doing and how you're doing against your peers, and getting recommendations of, hey, read this article, see what your peer has done in this space, and take advantage of it, right? You can then quickly send off a note to your platform owner or whoever owns the actual implementation and say, hey, this might be a great next idea to take us to the next level. And so I think those are kind of how, we see the evolution with a digital experience, right, around customer success. That's always showing to whoever the key stakeholder is, both at the customer side as well as internally, the people that are touching the customer, from the customer success managers to even the sales organization. What's the value that you're getting? I think that's tremendously powerful, and really the direction we need to go to, right, as an industry of customer success resources.
Yeah, very much so. And it's not, and this isn't, by the way, this isn't something that you have to be the big public company to be able to do either. I mean, we're like, we're like 14 FTE, and we're already starting to experiment with that very thing, with putting in, sending Sam a note once a month that says, hey, here's how your team is progressing in their learning plans, and here's the value that you're getting out of it, and making it very easy to consume and making it a digital experience. So important. And one last thing I want to touch on that you also mentioned that sparked another memory is and it's actually something that we teach, is how important it is to connect the value that you're providing within the context of your customer, serving their customers better, right? If we have a solution, or if we can connect the value that we're delivering as a vendor to the customer, creating value for their customers, that makes you really sticky.
Oh yeah, that's like the holy grail, right?
Exactly.
That's the holy grail that you want to elevate to. And something you touched upon that I kind of glossed over, but I do want to reiterate is, one of the challenges, right, that I hear in general around customer success is, how do we elevate the conversation? How do we get a seat at the table with the C-level executives, especially at the big companies? Well, guess what? If you're able to show that value, and you're showing like what it is and what you've been able to accomplish, then you'll get the seat at the table, right? They're going to be wanting to talk to you if you're helping to drive to their outcomes, right? What, just as earlier we talked about, we want to make employees happy. Well, they want to make themselves look good too, right? To their bosses, to their board of directors, right? Or to their shareholders, around the impact that they're having. And so by showing that value real time, it's so powerful and so key, and allows the customer success resource to elevate themselves within the organization and have the privilege, right, of being able to sit at the table and have these conversations. And so I think that's really the importance of kind of this evolution that we're continuing on with customer success.
Yeah, playing the ego card.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Sam, thank you. Thanks for your time. This is great. We could have probably talked for another couple hours about this, but
I'm sure we could have.
We'll just have to do this again.
Absolutely. I'm always excited to be here, and thank you as always, Andrew, for having me on this panel, and looking forward to another discussion.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.